Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to a special Cocktails with Jim podcast. On July 31st, I got together my dad, Dick Smart, Pat Owen, and Art Hill to discuss their experiences in Vietnam. All four of these men are United States Marines. The thing that binds them together is the passing of their friend, Mr. James E. Lott, also known as Kiwi. Jim Lott was killed in action in Vietnam via a rocket attack that hit the van that he was controlling air traffic from. They'll talk about this event and share other stories of their time in country. The following audio is their discussion they had over Zoom. It does contain some heavy subject matter and some profane language, so please view at your discretion. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, after Kiwi got killed, you and I kind of were buddies. I remember I came out to the unit. You have a different perspective because I was coming across the runway. Dick was inside, but you saw it from the tower. What did you see right away? Did you see it come in or just blow up, or how did that look to you?
No, you have to remember, I was in the unit talking to those people about upstairs. I saw a flashlight out in the hill,
Yep.
and the next thing you know, boom. You got 3 seconds when you see that flashlight. That's a 122 millimeter rocket, 8-foot projectile with 100 TNT in it. And man, it just, that was the third time I got close to being blown away when I was over now. I got blown up twice in that damn long.
Oh yeah. Dick was there. He was inside, and when we got to the wall, have you seen that video too, Art? Did I send it to you? Of when Pat and I and Dick were at the wall?
No.
I'll send it to you then. It's quite a deal. But I mentioned to Dick, I said, in Dick's case, it was about half a foot. He would have been right there with Kiwi, and me, it was a minute. Kiwi took the chair I had all day. Pat, when you were there, you probably lost a lot of guys in your squadron too. How was that?
Well, we actually we did, but it was pilot error on the two that had a mid-air over Marble Mountain over the airfield, trying to look too good, and they killed 4 guys. But combat, we only lost 2 of the whole year I was there, which 2 out of 55 or 60 that we thought those are pretty good odds.
That's amazing.
Well, the difference was, again, is that we're not sitting down in the weeds. We're flying over the top of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was the 46 pilots and crew, plexiglass and a little bit of aluminum in front of them. And they'd sit down on the stuff, and it was just, to this day, I still look at them and think they had to be crazy to do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was very fortunate to be where I was.
We had a neighbor kid that was in the fraternity with my brother, and he went in. He was a captain, and he flew 46s out of Marble. And I was on that night, and we heard him on guard. They were up enough, but another chopper said, we just had somebody smacked into the mountain and exploded. It was him. And
really?
Everybody on board was killed. They claimed, I knew him. I knew all of his relatives because they were farm kids right in the neighborhood. And that was one of the toughest things. And when your parents realized somebody that they knew died and their son was still there, that was tough. And I never knew that because when my mom died, a doctor came up to me and said, you never knew what your mother went through while you were there those 2 years.
Yeah.
I had no idea, and we're young. We didn't even think of that.
One of the funny moments is at Chulai when I decided I had nothing to do. I said, well, I'll go catch a ride with this 01 and we'll go do some BDA, bomb damage assessments.
Yeah.
I get in the back seat to be his observer. And the first thing I see, he takes off his flak jacket and he sits on it.
Sits on it, yeah. Yeah.
I go, isn't that a little uncomfortable? He goes, son, think about where the bullets are coming from. Oh yeah. And you can watch them, man. They're coming right out the wood at you. You see the tracer, and there's not a friggin' thing you can do. You just hope they're really bad shots.
The only time I took a round that I could feel was in the seat, and it was an armor seat that we sat on in the Cobra, and you could feel the thump. And when we got back to the base, they took the gun apart. The turret was right underneath the front seat, and sure enough, there was a nice round 7.62 lodged in the ceramic armor.
I didn't have too bad of a time. There was a couple close calls. One time we got mortared, and I barely made it in the bunker, and it was exploding out front. I thought this is going to be it. And then one time we got hit with a truck, but I was lucky. 2-3 times close calls. So Dick, how was your tour? What did you think? And how many months were you there before you were medevaced out?
11, excuse me, 11 and a half. Well, I knew that we were going to get hit that night.
Really?
Yeah, because the pups on that they hired to keep this area clean show up.
Oh, really? So
yeah, we knew he was VC, but the captain that was in charge of the relations with the with the locals.
Oh yeah,
he wouldn't believe us. And the last time the Pop Son didn't show up, they came at us, but they missed and hit the launch at recovery right next to us. So when Pop Son didn't show up, we knew we were going to hit that night. So we all said we were going to sleep in the bunkers that night. But they hit earlier than they've ever hit before. They hit us at 5:35.
Yeah, and he had the map. He had everything mapped out. Yeah, we all had watch officers that we just never knew how they got there.
Yeah.
They couldn't do anything else, so they stuck them on us.
But 5 minutes before it hit, I was standing next to Kiwi talking to him.
Yep.
And then he said he wanted to lay his head down and take a nap.
Yeah.
So I walked in and sat down in that division between that little area and the main area. And I was talking. And that's when it hit. I started off with True Line. They sent me to Callahan for a while, and then to Anwa for a while. And then they pulled me back to True Line. But at True Line, I got set on Perona Guard twice. I got set bomb dump for a while. I had fun.
You had a diversified career and did many things, some not so interesting, huh?
Yep.
And we had some guys that got there in freaking October. We couldn't check them out because they weren't too good to begin with. And those are the guys that went to the Air Force school. They weren't really taught like we were.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same, cutting score we had. So it was a little different.
Did the Marines send people to the Air Force school?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we got 4 of them. And I was a corporal, I was going to be a sergeant, but I was a corporal most of the time, starting towards the end. But they came up to me and they said, DC, which 4 guys should go to Callahan? Well, I should have said, I'll go because I was checked out. But they said, you ain't going no place. So I sent everybody that was at Keesler. I said, they aren't getting it. We won't check them out before the monsoon. Nobody got killed, but every one of them got wounded. Every damn one of them. So that's just the way it goes. Yeah, they sent a few, because I remember when I was in, and all you guys, when we enlisted and got into this field, they were pushing a lot of guys through the thing, and they wanted a lot of us to be radar qualified too. So I went back to Georgia for radar because they were geared up, and we had maybe half a dozen MATQs in country, at least.
You finished A school, went to Cherry Point, then went back to C school?
Yeah.
See, I stayed for the whole thing. I just went straight through.
Well, Dan, what the Marine Corps teaches you when you get through boot camp is you will survive.
Yes.
You will know what you can do. With whatever the world throws at you, you will survive. It teaches you self-control and self-discipline. That's what I got.
Yeah,
So
me too.
That's what happened. And I spent almost 30 years at O'Hare. I've seen them come. I've seen them go.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm one of the last few of the people that were working there that I was both certified in the tower and in the TRACON before they separated them and moved the TRACON to Elgin. But the guys with military background excelled.
Yep.
The guys, other than that, we had pretty much a 75% washout rate.
Yep. We had an area that was Michigan when I was there. We were proud of it. We only checked out 26%, period. They'd send us 5, we'd send 4 back. And, I was training soup and all that stuff and went through it, and it was difficult. Pat, when you were flying Harriers, what was the experiences at first? I was at the VA and I was talking to this guy that was a controller, and he said, he was top of the class. He's a Marine. And we went back and forth. He was after Vietnam, but he says, I got caught up. And he says, I was a union president somewhere in the Midwest. And he says, I walked out and lost my job. But he's been very successful. But he got talking about when he was at Cherry Point, he was a controller, and he was friends with this Harrier pilot. He says, we weren't frat, but we were good friends. And he says, our wives, he says, we went out to dinner. And he says, talk to him all the time. But he says, I was the last guy that talked to him when he pancaked in at the end of the runway. He says he was coming up, going down. Right. And he said, one side went out, he flipped over, and that was it. I was gone. We were all gone before the Harriers came. Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't know who that was that he was talking about?
He mentioned, he says, he was my friend, and he says, I was the last man he talked to the night before and on the transmission. And then he was telling me some other stuff. And, we're both at the VA for one thing or the other. So he gets up and he starts shaking and crying and grabbed a hold of me and said, Semper Fi, you hang in there. And my God, it was okay. I'm fine with that. I am. But son of a gun, some of the experience that some of these people had. But you were in the Harrier Squadron for what, 20 years?
Well, no, I got in 74
and
retired and left the flying business in 84, so 10 years worth.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was, it was one of the funny stories that comes out of this is that our maintenance officer with 231 at the time, he ends up being the assistant commandant before he retires.
Oh, wow.
And I went down to his, he was at the Navy Yard in DC. And he was staying in the visiting general's quarters, whatever. And it's, this great apartment. He always would have a big Christmas party down there.
Yeah.
And there was a Navy admiral who happened to be the CEO of Navy Federal at the time, but an old carrier pilot in the whole business. And talking to Rich Herney and myself about, so what was, the experience about, your first flight or whatever. Well, it wasn't quite the first flight, but we did their first hover. We'd go down to the end of runway 5, approach end of 5, and the wives and the family would come out. They'd have lawn chairs, picnic baskets and stuff, and we'd taxi out and do our press ups at the end of the runway on the concrete mat. And he looked at us and said, "You did what?" He said, "What? Somebody would crash." And Ernie and I looked at each other like said, "Well, I don't think we ever thought about that, But it was one of those things that if you ever ran it by the safety office, oh my God, they would have killed us, for this. But that's just kind of what it was a big party. It was a hover party,
Jeez, wow. Now, Art, after that, Art and I kept in touch most of the time. We're good friends in Nam. We spent a lot of time looking over the South China Sea, drinking, taking the 6-by up the road and hitchhiking, all that stuff. So we've known each other well, and we've kept in touch, and our careers would cross here and there. I'd see him here and there and bump into him, and we'd have a few drinks. We always had a good time. But what I did in Nam, and I think Dick Smart knows this, towards the end, I didn't give a damn. I says, everybody's complaining they didn't want to burn the excrement. And somebody back home says, why'd you do that? Well, I says, the maggots, it sounded like popcorn. And that killed the pit vipers, because you never knew when you sat down what might be there. So I says, this way, as long as we cooked them, they were all right. So I'd pull 4 of them out, and I'd put 5 gallons of diesel fuel in each one, 5. And I'd figure out where the wind was, and I'd get them beside the tower, and I put a gas behind the mess tent, a gasoline fuse, and top each one off. And then the thing would explode, and there'd be a huge black smoke go into the tower. And they'd be cussing at me and showing all this lamp and shining me when I was jumping back in the radar band. That's where I got the term Dirty Dan the Radar Man. So later on, here I am with Art, and we're both drinking, and Art says, you remember that time you were out there taking a leak in the P tube? And he says, it was raining, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. He kind of motioned. It was me. The stuff, the stuff we did, I mean, it was freaking insane. But we were on the beach, and, we always figured if the POL farm blew up, we were screwed. So we never worried. And like you said, we never worried about anything. Oh God, this is something else. We scrambled. We ended up putting revetment barrels full of sand with revetment steel on top. We had the CPN-4 that was stationary on the main runway, on the VFR runway, of course. So we used that for search. And then we had found a box with an operable approach GCA. We ended up having wires strung, and everybody worked together. We strung the wire back and forth. A lot of times we were yelling coordination back and forth, but we're lucky. We're lucky. Dick, was VFR. I mean, you got hit in May, and in the summertime, we weren't too busy. Nobody wanted to make a practice approach. And when they had to, it was 100 days IFR. You guys know that were there. The lid had come down to be 100 days. You're wet. Everything stunk. I used to control in my skivvies in a freaking blanket because my clothes were wet. But we were fortunate because we had air conditioning. And one of the doggone guys, after we got blown up, he salvaged the air conditioners and put them in a library he made. So we had an air-conditioned lounge. It's amazing. And I give credit to all the techs.
From Da Nang down to Cameron Bay,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to let the pilot, get the pilot to let me talk on the air when we flew over to let him know I was being transferred, but he wouldn't do it. Well,
and you talk about what your experience was, to Art's experience and Dick's experience. My experience was I was on an air-conditioned booth right on the beach. Get clean sheets every night. Got to go fly every day. Get to do what I was trained to do. We had minimal casualties. So I came back, and my 21 years, that was the best year of my Marine Corps career was Vietnam.
I've been diagnosed 100% PTSD.
Yeah, me is by degrees, I'm at 100%, but it's everything collective. I had diabetes, and I had this, I had that. When they opened me up, they called my wife, and I never applied for nothing. They just called me in the office. Says, you're this, you're this, you're this. And there's some people that are getting screwed.
We took a short break here. Stay tuned for the second half of the podcast.
Yeah, we got hit one night. They were walking the mortars right down the line, and I was in the mortar watch tower there. And I got shit and debris poured all over me. And the only thing I can think about is, I hope I don't get a dry tit on this sucker.
Yeah.
And they hit all the way down. I must have been 10 in a row, all the way down our line. Unfortunately, they went both sides of the motor watch star. I was covered with crap. And then the shit hit the fan. All I know, Danny, is by when the morning came, I was out of bullets. I absolutely went through 6 magazines, and I have a very hard recollection of what the hell I was shooting at.
Yeah.
But the next morning, I went and found me an automatic rifleman because I still had my M14. They hadn't quite integrated to 16 yet. And the automatic rifle guys had the 7.62 round. So after that, I made sure I had a double bandolier and ammunition and 6 magazines. CB was leaving country. I bought his 45 from him, a couple of million. I had cave up bayonet. And I go, and had 3 grenades. I remember a guy asked me, "Sace, what are you going to do with all that stuff, Sarge?" I go, "Hey, by the time if I spend all this stuff and they're still coming through, said they're not going to catch me because they're going to be slipping and sliding in this brown streak I'm going to leave between here and the South China Sea." But no, that was, and when I ended up telling that story basically to when the VA sent me to a psychologist when you file all this stuff.
Yep.
And she goes, "Sir, you had PTSD." And unfortunately, at that time in your life, nobody understood it, but you definitely had PTSD. Right. And then she goes, "I'm going to write it up." I go, "Oh, okay, thank you." But what that did, just thinking about that, because I hate to say it, that there were times my wife would say, "You got anger issues."
Yes.
Yep. I think she must have been right. So that has helped me curb that, keep myself under control better.
I had that. I hate to say it, but I had that for a while, and I don't know why. I think I'm more mellow now. We've all been through it. And after you got out, you went into coaching, and not coaching, but ref, right, on a national level.
Oh yeah, I've worked I worked international ball, I worked professional ball, you name it. I worked 7 World Cups, World University games.
What sport?
In the women's softball.
Oh,
I worked at WPF for 12 years. I was a player. In 2012, if the IOC hadn't pulled softball off the schedule, I was scheduled to go to the Olympics. But they gave me the World University Games instead. So I still got to work a lot of good stuff. Now, funny about that was I was sitting up in the stands because when you're working at level, you cannot work your country. So Australia was playing New Zealand. So I'm sitting in the stands with this New Zealand guy, and I'm just having fun. I go, hey, mate, which one of them down there is Sheila? He goes, Sheila's.
Yeah, that was the name they used when I was in Australia. Everybody was Sheila. Everybody was, "Hey, Sheila." Wow. How about you, Dick? I know you went through the strike and something happened, but what did you do after that?
After that, I went to school for computer programming and got a job with one company. And then one of our customers hired me on to be their IT manager.
Good, great.
And then I went on from there to be basically the IT manager for the Louisiana State Employees Retirement System.
All right. You landed on your feet and you didn't feel sorry for yourself.
No.
Good for you. Good for you. I stayed in for 40 years. I was an OM when I got out. And when they promoted me to OM, a bunch of guys came up. They says, "I never thought they would promote somebody like you. I don't know anybody anything." He says, "We know it." I said, so I'm just going to do my thing. And I had a good career. I walked out of there. I left a little earlier because after a while, I didn't feel like I was fitting in. So I left after, I think I was 59 when I retired. But
Dan,
I
what's
love
an OM? What's OM?
Say again?
You said
What
what's
is
OM?
OM?
Oh, ops manager at Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my last 5 years. But when I was doing SoupCon, they were jealous. They kept trying to screw me over and give me bad schedules. And they said, well, I bet you're talking about us when you go to Washington. I said, you guys are nuts. I said, sure, I know people over there. I said, there's a lot of Marines I've run into that are working for the FAA. I said, I talk to people. So what? I says, there's a lot larger fish to fry than you guys. And I turned my back on them, but I had a good career. But once I got out, I kind of didn't do too much. And lately, they've been asking me to do some stuff for Irish and put on a couple presentations. And I got one next year for the Polish immigrants in my area. So I'm getting on the radio and getting that cooking, and I'm having fun. But when I worked for the FAA, we got bases all over the country. We ended up going to Point Loma for $20 a night, Minneapolis for $6 a night. I'd bring the region in, we'd put them in the BOQ. But once 9/11 happened, no more fam trips and no more going on the bases. So, and I know you went into finance for sure. And when did you get out of the Marine Corps?
I retired in '86,
Okay.
but I beat the proverbial sword into a plowshare at a farm in Montana for about eight or 9 years.
Really?
Yeah, before we came back to Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
Went to work for Dean Witter.
Oh, good.
Which turned out to be Morgan Stanley eventually. So, but here's an aside. The Marine Air Traffic Control Association,
Yep.
and you're a member. We're hosting the association in Hershey this year in
I know.
September. So it's getting to be a smaller crowd. So if anybody wants to join us, there's about 60 people signed up for it so far. After 4 years and go to the FAA then?
Well, actually, I was almost 5 years. I extended my enlistment 2 years to extend my tour in Vietnam because I spent 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days in Vietnam.
Yeah. I was right at 2 years, but I took leave in Australia. I never regretted that. No, when you went to be a cop, didn't you, Art, for a while?
Yeah, I was a police officer in Detroit, out there for a couple of years. But,
You broke up on that one. Where were you?
the Detroit suburban area. I went to the Detroit Metropolitan Police Academy, and after I got through the academy with my training officer, my first week on, I had 3 homicides and 2 suicides. I go, welcome back to Detroit.
Wow.
But that was another story. But where I was leaving after before is that when I came back from Vietnam after I extended my enlistment, they offered me a 6-month get out. So I only spent about 5.5 years.
Yeah. I
go, okay. And then that's another thing, Danny. What happened there was they weren't going to even let me out because I had a hearing loss. Obviously, I don't care who you are. We're shooting, mortars and artillery and firing rifles. And I had a hearing loss, but I didn't. At that point in time, I needed to get out.
Yeah.
But now this last year, a VO officer says, "No, man, I got to file a claim on that." And VA just approved my hearing loss 50 years later.
I heard of that. The guy says, I was in artillery. And they said, oh, you're all right. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense.
I'm at an arty base. I got blown off my bunker one night. I mean, absolutely.
I know.
Like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer.
Some of it don't make any sense at all. It defies logic, for God's sakes. And guys, when I'm at the VA, my wife says, well, you're always advertising. Well, I always got some hat that says Marine or something on it. And somebody will grab you from behind. And sometime I'll be standing in line and all of a sudden the swabby will say, effing jarhead. And then he'll come up and talk to me. Or one guy grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me back. He says, where were you? When were you there? God dang. She says, who are you talking? She says, you never saw him before. I said, don't matter. I said, you'd be surprised what you learn from these strangers. You really would. And I says, it doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what they look. I could care less if they want to talk. And what I'm finding is some of these guys will tell you stuff that happened. They won't tell their family. And they'll sit and tell you stories. And some of them end up getting emotional, but that's fine. That's all fine. I say, just get it out. Get it out. So.
Right.
How many times do you run across somebody who maybe says he was there but was not?
I know. I don't think there have been a couple, and that bothers me. Anybody throughout life that's phony, like I told Jim, I says, if you got it and you know what you're doing, you have a right to be whatever. And I told the controllers on the team, I said, you can be cocky, you can be loud. If you're good and you're not disturbing the whole, I don't care. Yeah. But I said, if you're phony and you don't know what you're doing, I said, you're going to be in trouble and you're going to hear from me. So, most of it was good, but there's some nights you had Art knows this. So does Dick. You had to shuffle people around to get the right people in spots when the stuff hit the fan. And you knew that, and they knew that. And they knew who they were, and the others never knew that they were that freaking weak. Some guys would throw up. The weather be bad. They'd be in the damn parking lot throwing up, and they wouldn't come into work. It was that bad. They didn't even have the right to wear a headset. And I honestly believe that. Now it's easier to get multiple choice in the en route option. You get 5 choices to do to separate the airplanes. Well, you can do this, or you can do that, or you can do this. And it's all there. And what we used to do,
I want to go back to Vietnam for a minute.
Yeah.
From a pilot's perspective, I thought the controllers, and I pretty much 90% what I did was in the Da Nang area.
Yep.
The controllers were just superb.
Oh yeah.
And we just never had an issue. You just knew. Yeah. You just worked well, and it was. My guess is most of them were Marines, but there were probably some Air Force too in there. I don't really know.
The busiest places was Chu Lai was 6, Da Nang was 4 or 5, Bien Hoa was right up there. They were like out of the 8, I think the 5 of the busiest were right in now. We had about a year during Tet, and then there was one time where they had the taxiway, they had the back taxi and all that stuff. These guys got through it, and I ended up. The wing got a PUC. I didn't know what the hell I got a PUC for, but I was attached to the wing, and I ended up with a PUC. Everybody did, I think. No, I enjoyed it. It was okay. The people I worked with were great. They were always there. Everybody helped everybody out. And if there was a shitstorm some night and there was a little bit of script, we worked it out.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
A little pilot humor, not really humor, but a friend of mine was an F8 jockey, and he unfortunately he had to bail out of his plane. And he tell you, when you pull down that face curtain to eject,
yes,
somebody wrote in the inside, you now owe the government $3.5 million.
I'm surprised he was able to concentrate that long.
I don't know if it's true or not.
It's a good story. What he said. I like the story. Yeah.
Were you there, Art, when that F4 came in with no gear and he hit the foam, but he went on the other side, he caught on fire, and he scoots down the runway. The whole ass was on fire. No gear, nothing. And he's sliding down the runway and he punched it into afterburner. He got the damn thing out over the water and punched out. And one of the diesel mechs was taking the film. We don't know how the hell that ever happened, but he did. And he missed the village and everything else, and he came out of it alive. Some of them didn't, but he came
Did he
out
go
of it.
around because he was going to slide off the runway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was going to go out and hit the anchor chain on the end.
Just say, you know where he's heading.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you remember that crosswind runway out there, Dick? They had a crosswind runway set up. And when the weather got really bad and the wind a certain way, they tried to use the damn thing. Well, there was nothing to bring them in on that. So I found a bunker. I says, well, why don't we bring them down on an ASR as far as the bunker? And if they can see it at 1.5 miles, they can take the runway. The Texan says, you can't do that. You can't. I said, well, the one time I'm in the FAA and Fargo approaches out and I got this trainee and I looked at him. I says, draw a freaking line with a ruler. I says, that's your ILS. He said, what? I said, just get him on there. And once he gets a capture, I said, turn him over the tower. Jesus. And the soup went nuts. He says, what the hell? I says, it's working. We got him down. I says, it's all that matters. And he just looked at me like this. There's another story. This is different. I'm working a guy in the morning and he's going across Lake Michigan. He happened to be the head of the highway patrol. And everybody was a controller has stories like this. He was in a PA-28. It starts sputtering. He was training somebody. And I could hear it. He says, I don't think we're going to make Traverse City. He's coming in from Marquette, Sawyer area. I says, okay. There's an island out there called North Manitou Island. I said, there's a lake on that island. So I tried to get him out, but instinct, I launched a helicopter right away. I says to Tower, you got a helicopter in a pattern? Because that's what we did. And I says, launch him. I'll talk to him. He was talking to this guy, but then he lost him. There was a snow squall came in. This guy goes on the lake, but the lake was fed by Lake Michigan underneath. So the frickin' ice was shallow. He goes through the ice. He dies about 10 feet from the airplane. And the other guy crawled out and they found him dead against a tree covered with about 18 inches of snow. Now I'm at a procedures committee meeting in Washington and I'm sitting right across from this helicopter association guy representing the helicopter association. He says, I was at Traverse City with the Coast Guard. And I right away I perked up and he smelled something. I said, he says, you were the guy, weren't you? I said, yep. He said, we couldn't save him. He says, you did everything you could. And he says, had we saved him? He says, yeah. I said, I know, but I said, it's just what you do. I says, we did it. And I was sitting with another guy. He was a Marine. And the soup was all temporary. He was all worried. He says, oh, you guys need trauma leave? I said, no, the guy died. What do you want? I said, we did our best. And he didn't make it. I said, this is part of life. Said, how can you say that? I said, c'est la vie. That's what Kiwi used to say. C'est la vie, c'est la guerre.
Also, our love and Warren.
And everybody's had stories like that. That was amazing that the guy was there. That kind of stuck with me. And it's like, but I told a story about Kiwi and his brother. I got to know his brother because his brother came down. You might have met him too. About 2 days before Kiwi got killed, his brother Gary comes down.
Yeah.
Visit. But 2 days after Gary went back to the DMZ, he's a Marine, Kiwi gets killed. It took them about 6 days to bring Gary down. And they got him in a uniform, and whatever. And they put him on a plane for Hawaii. And all these bodies, these caskets, were in the airplane. When they got to Hawaii, they were dispersing them to where they were going to be laid to rest. Kiwi, he had to identify his brother. And you know what mess Kiwi was in after that rocket got him?
Yeah.
He had to identify him. Yes, he had to identify him and then go to New Zealand.
Why the heck why weren't they ID'd before they put him in a casket?
I don't know, but it happened to be there that they put him in. They had all these by, but when they got there, they were dispersing the bodies, and Gary happened to be there. But then he went to New Zealand with his brother. He never got over that, because I was back and forth with him with email once in a while, and his last email to me was, he said, Dan, I'm dying. I've got liver cancer. Help with the VA. And I told a story to a couple of veterans groups, and some of the older guys started crying. I'm not shitting you. And they says, we went home and told our wives, and we were crying too. They said, that came from here. I says, it does. I says, I'm sick and tired of people giving you goddamn lectures and giving you a bunch of statistics. I says, people don't want to hear that crap anymore. They want to hear how it was, feeling, not bragging, just what happened and how you are. I said, the rest of that stuff, we all know the stats. I said, put them on the wall, have them look at them, but don't belabor that BS. I get sick of that after a while, because they all these old time, 58,000 or this, and the youngest one was I don't care. Some of us lost friends. We lost a lot of good people with that.
There was a guy that I grew up with. In fact, I talked him into quitting high school and joining the Marines.
Wow.
Because he was 23 years old in the ninth grade and was failing again. So he joined a little bit after me.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, same time I was. In fact, he got there a little bit before me.
Yeah.
So we finally got together, spent a day together. He went back to his unit.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
May 9th, he was leaving. He was going back home, so he came to see me, to tell me goodbye. He walked into my hut, looked around, and says, hey, a smart act. And whoever it was in the hut at the time says, oh, he got blown away last night. What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny how, and not funny, but it's strange how stuff like that happens. And you just don't know.
I am really glad I'm back with you guys. Anytime.
Anytime
Well,
you want. Yep.
good to see you, Dick. It's been a while.
Now, keep in touch, kid. Let me know. Patrick, when are you coming to Minnesota again? In February?
That seems like the most likely time. We get to babysit the grandson and go watch hockey. He's now doing before school practice, after school practice. It's a bit crazy, but what are grandparents for, right?
We know. Jim's got 2 girls, and we know. How about you, Art, with the grandkids and other activities?
Yeah, I got 13 grandkids.
Busy.
All this, and I've got a 26-year-old son.
I got a 52-year-old son. I tell everybody my two oldest sons believe that biblical prophecy.
Yes.
Go forth and multiply.
There's more hills around. What the hell? Why not?
Where do you live, Art?
Right now I live in Green Bay, but I grew up in Detroit and then I worked at Chicago almost all my life.
You're in Green Bay.
Well, yeah. I'm in Green Bay, unless I'm in Vegas, then I'm a Raiders fan.
I remember you went to the game.
You're down in Louisiana, right?
Yeah, Baton Rouge, right, Dick?
Yeah, I'm in Baton Rouge. And by the way, remember that youngster that came with me to the wall?
Yes.
He's now a corporal stationed in Okinawa.
What's his MOS?
He's in it's in the O1s. He's intelligence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick one about age. when I was got back from Vietnam, I went to West Coast in 72, 73. I was down at Camp Pendleton, and we stood up the HMA 169 down there. And one of the young lieutenants that came through had a little, after about there a couple months, he had this little baby, maybe 2, 3 months old. The little baby is now 1-star general, sitting up here at the Deputy Chief of Staff for Air, Headquarters Marine Corps.
We got a kid back home. His dad was in the Army. He's a good friend of my brother's. He died of brain cancer at 50. His son was a colonel when he was talking to us. Now he's got a star. And we knew the family. They're just an Irish family up the road, just like his dad. He's got that presence when he comes into the room.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I went in for my license and I asked him, I said, right out, you got a couple of minutes. But I says, can you put SFMF on that damn thing? But sure. So I got SFMF and my operating initials DC. My wife says, what the hell is that? I says, only a certain group will know it. Because the rest of them freaking matter. I'm telling other Marines, I says, ask. I says, you can get the same damn. They won't let us put a Marine logo in Minnesota. So I did the next best thing. SFMF. And so I says, what's MF mean? Whatever you want it to mean. But if you're a Marine, you know.
Yeah.
This is great. Thanks.
Next time.
Yeah, we'll see you, Dickie.
Bye.
All right, guys.
Everybody.
Good talking.
Thanks for participating.
That was nice meeting you, buddy.
Nice meeting you too, Art. Take care.
And everybody.
Bye bye.